Hello, this is Joe Neville, and in this video I'm going to give you a crash course in Git and GitHub. Now, I think Git and GitHub are fantastic tools which I use in my day-to-day work, whether that's writing code or documentation. Pretty much every piece of work that I want to save, I start as a Git repo. But I do know that Git has a fearsome reputation for a very steep learning curve, but it is so worth your time and the investment required to learn it so that you can start using this fantastic tool. Now, in this video, I am going to be showing you setting up a Git repo on GitHub, cloning that down, doing some git add, git commit, and then a push to master, which you shouldn't normally do, but then we're going to take that a step further and really start using Git properly by git branching, then a push, and a pull request, all in this short video. So let's jump straight into it. I should say that we are doing this on macOS, but it's very similar if you're using Windows or Linux. Here we are on GitHub. I've already hit the create new repository button, the big green one. Here's me. I'm going to be the owner of this. We'll create a new repo name. And I should stress that you should, before you start your project, create the repo and then clone it down. Don't start writing the code or the documents that you want to push to GitHub beforehand, because then you end up in a bit of a messier workflow. So my suggestion is create the repo first, clone it down, and then start your work. Okay, so we'll create a public one for this. You can initialize with a README, fine. Here, this is interesting for the git ignore. So this is what Git will ignore when you do a git add to stage things. More about that later. And you can choose the language that you want. So if you were writing Python, you could put that in there, which saves you time. I'm not. This is just going to be a text tutorial. So we'll leave that as none. And then let's hit the create repository. There we are. I've created my repository and I've got my README there, which is in Markdown. Now, first step then, let us clone down. So I've already set this to clone to SSH. You can HTTPS. I'm using SSH keys. I've done a video about that already on the ABC networking channel. I'll stick a link up on the screen now to that. So what we do is we clone that down. That should save that locally. Then let's jump over to a terminal. Here I am. Like I said, this is macOS Mojave, so I'm in my home directory. What I will do then is I normally have a directory called code, which I then clone down to. But for this demo, we'll just do it, make a new one. I'll call it code 2 for these purposes. Move into there. So this keeps it nice and clean where you're cloning down. And we do a git clone and right click. It should paste it in. Right, so let's pull this across. So you can see this is when I copied across here. So that's going to clone that down for me. So demo 123, if I hit this, should be cloned down. And there we are. So we've cloned down. If you do an ls, you'll see that you've brought the folder down. Okay, so demo 123. And this is an early mistake that I kept making, was not to then move into that folder. So what we have to do is we'll cd into that folder. Okay, excellent. So here we are. You can see the README actually. If we do an ls, you'll see a bit more. You see you've got a .git, okay, so your git history. So this is why it's good to now start our work in this directory, so that we are tracking this and we are using Git from the off. Okay, now so this is going to be a simple tutorial. I won't do any coding. What I will do is just play around with a text file. Now, so let's, what we'll do, sudo vi example1.txt. Excellent, here we are. So if you don't know vi, no worries. I'll do an insert and we'll go very, very simple to start with. So what I'll do is I'll just put some numbers in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and I'll exit out of that, save that. Okay, now, so I've created this. If we cat example 1, you'll see I've just created a bunch of numbers in the file. So like I said, simple example, but if you were writing some code, so you'd write your code in your file. So if it'd be a .py, etc. So now if we go to the let me bring this up a bit so we're more central. if we do a git status, so this is one of your key commands. Git status will tell you what's going on, what changes have been made in the files, etc. So this is a very useful command. It tells you what branch you're on. So we're on branch master. We've only got one branch to start with, and the default is master. Tells us that we're up to date, fine. And we've got an untracked file. So that's because I've created a file or I've changed it. So it detects that we have changes in this .txt file which we haven't committed. Okay, so that's like if you're playing a video game and you've got your save points, as you're going through your work, you want to do commits, which are like your saves. Okay, and then you create a bunch of commits. When you're happy with what you've got, then you push it up to GitHub, and that essentially stores it for you. That's the simple workflow if you're just using a single branch. And if it's just you, then that might make sense for you. That might be more intuitive. But in the real world, if you're in a collaborative project, etc., or when you get a bit more advanced with Git, you never push to master. Okay, you always want to be branching. More about that in a moment. So the first step to actually storing this up on GitHub, so as you can see, if I refresh this, there won't be anything up here. So it's just the README, okay? So let us do, so if we want to stage, we do a git add. Now you can use regular expressions, I believe, in here. So you can do a star or you can do a dot, and that will add everything. But that's pretty dangerous, because what happens with beginners is that they tend to learn like a git add star to save them time, but they end up pushing lots of files that they don't want up to GitHub. So I would advise that to exercise good hygiene to start from the off, is to do a git add of the specific files that you want, or at least the first part of the file. So you could do, like, if you had multiple examples, 1, 2, 3, you could do something like a star there, and then that would add it, okay? Or a example, the exact one, but we've already added it. There we are. Okay, so if we now do a git status, like I said, constantly going back and using git status is your thread. You can see that you've got changes to be committed there, and you've got a new file. So that's in a nice green color there. So what we can do is we can commit. So that's like our save. So we'll do git commit, and -m will create a message. So here we should use a meaningful message. So don't just keep adding like first commit, second commit, third commit. When you start getting into Git properly, you'll realize that these messages are like gold dust for you. If you've got good messages, it means that you can scroll back and see what changes are made. So what you should be trying to do is, for each logical change, you should be creating a git, so a commit, sorry. So if you are doing something like, oh, I was adding some doc strings to some Python, multiple functions, so that would be like a logical change of a bunch of functions. Okay, I added some doc strings to that. If you're refactoring a whole module, for example, don't just do the commit, like a single commit, when you've done all the work. So if you've got, oh, I'll take these global variables now, I'm going to put them into a function or something like that, maybe a change like that. Make sure that that single logical change is a commit. That makes it so much easier to unpack this stuff and to go backwards and forwards through your versioning. Okay. So for this first one, what we'll do, we'll just do the commit here, and I would say added numbers to text file. Okay, just a simple commit. Add that. So that's now committed. That's our save. That's local. So if we want to have a look at that, what we can do is we can see now the other command that I would recommend you learn. So git status, add and commit, and your git reflog gives you basically the history of what we've got here. So this is where it starts to get confusing for people. But essentially what you've got, you don't have numbers with Git. You have these commit IDs here, which are like this, okay? So in other version controls, you might have 1, 2, 3, 4, like commit 1, 2, 3. With Git, you don't have that, okay? You have these IDs, and it starts to get easier as you get into it. But I think this is the kind of thing that starts to really confuse people. What you can see here from this history is essentially that we've cloned down, so that was the first action there, and then we've added a commit, and you can see the commit message. Okay, so that's why when you're looking back through the history, it's important to have good commit messages. It makes it so much easier to see in your history what's going on. Right, so we've created the file, we've done the add, we've done the commit. So we can do another commit if we make another change. So we'll go through that process again. If I do... and this is a thing that a beginner always does. I picked this up at a recent meeting a bit about Git. So beginners tend to do the whole workflow in one go, which would be to do the change, do the git add, do the commit, and then the push up to GitHub. Now, you don't have to do that, okay? Do the commits as logical groups of changes, but when you're happy, like if you were finished for the day, etc., that's when you push, okay? It makes it that much more simple for you. So let's do another change to show you the workflow locally first. Remember, this is all local. So we'll do sudo vi, and we'll go back into... We'll go back in. Okay, there we are. Okay, so let's add. So I'll just add, obviously, 6. Well, let's do 7, 8. Save that. Okay, now we've made a change to the file that's being tracked. And so you can see modified here. So you've got example 1. It knows because Git is tracking what's in this directory, okay? Now, and also a change you can see is that it knows that we're ahead of the origin/master. So the origin/master is the repo up on GitHub that we've cloned down from, and it knows locally that we've got 1 commit. Okay, so we're 1 ahead from the history that it cloned down. Fine. Don't worry about that too much at the moment. That's just something to look out for. And it shows you all of the useful information if you keep doing git status. Right. So what we need to do locally is we'll go through that process again, the local process. Okay. Does seem a bit arduous to start with, but you will get into it, I'm sure. So we'll do a git add. And we'll do the example again, and I think this is the reason, because when you do the commits, and then you need to, if you make a change, then you do the add and you do the commit. People start to cut corners, so they start to use irregular expressions and do a git add star. Don't do that. Just hold back. Do put in the overhead here for this. You'll thank me in the long run. So git add again to add it. Check your git status, and you can see changes to be committed. Okay, so we've staged that file there. That's been modified for commit. So if we do a commit, now that will be part of the commit. Okay, so if you don't do your add, you'll have nothing to commit. It's like saying, oh, this is the file that I want to add into the commit. So the save, essentially. Okay, that's the process. Like I said, can be kind of a steep learning curve to start with. Just stick with it. Don't worry too much. Just go through the process. Right, so git commit again and a message. So we'll go added additional numbers. Oh, okay, what am I doing wrong here? There we go. Okay, fine, don't worry about that. That's just because I'm using the UK keyboard with a Mac, so it's slightly different. Okay, so that is, if we do the status, now we are committed, okay? But you can see this incrementing. So we've got 2 commits now. And if we look at the reflog, we'll be able to see those 2 commits, okay? So you can see my extra. I did mess up the message there. I'm not too bothered about that. Quick and dirty, crash course, etc., etc. You can go back in and edit those, but we're not in this. We won't do that in this one. Right, so now we've got a couple of commits. Let's push, and I'll show you something that you should never do, okay, but might make sense for you when you're starting out, which is a push to master, right? So let's see. One of the key things as well, really useful, is the git remote command. So if you do a git remote, it shows you where you're pushing to, and I think this is something that beginners get unstuck a bit with, because they can't visualize what's going on with the git push and pull, etc. These kind of things, like the clone, the pull, the push, the fetch, all of these things. But if you do, I think if you look at a git remote, it really helps you. So a git remote v will give you what are your remotes? Okay, so that's your remote repositories. You've got your local, which you've got your commits to, and then you've got your remote. And as you can see, the fetch and the push here, so this is, fetch is what you pull down from, and push is where you push up to. Okay, so the clone was essentially brought the directory down to us, and the git history and the readme, and then we've made the changes, and then we push back up. Okay, so that is, and it's called origin. Okay, so that's the remote. What it means is that we will fetch from there, and we will, so we can see where we're going to push to. So we want to push up to GitHub. Okay, there you can see from the URL, because you can have with more advanced Git, you can have interesting structures where you have multiple remotes, and you can push to this remote or you can push to that remote, etc. That's if you're using a fork and branch approach. More of that at a later date, I'm sure. So what we are going to do is we're going to push our commits. So that is a git push, because I'm not going to put in anything more than that, just for this simple example. Okay, because here you can designate which remote you're going to push to. You'll have them listed on here. So I'll do a git push, and that should go up, and that will go up to, so that's pushed up to the origin master remote now, and in this case that is GitHub. So we go over to here, I will do a refresh, and there you can see, so we got our let's see if we can make this, can I make that a bit bigger? Oh, okay, so I'm on a Mac, right, let's make that a bit bigger. There we go. So you can see example 1, right, and there's our file. Okay, so, and you can see the commit message and my error up there. Won't worry about that too much. Okay, so essentially now our work, which was stored locally, is now, well, it's essentially like in cloud storage up on GitHub. So you've got our file up there. Okay, so if you are, and you can see we've got 3 commits, and you can actually go in, if you hit the commits, you can see those. Let's go back to this. Okay, now, and you can see we've only got 1 branch, and we've got 1 contributor, and all those good things. Right, now if we wanted to then make sure that we were not always pushing to master, so the next stage is to actually do branching. Now the reason you might want to do that is, especially when you're writing code, and when you think about the structure of code, or if you're writing a document, etc., you might be at a place where you're not sure. So it's a bit like, I'd say, it's a bit like a choose your own adventure book, where when I was a kid and you used to kind of leave your finger in there and say like, I'm not sure if I had to go down this passage, is there going to be a monster down there that's going to kill me? So you kind of save there, leave that so you can always go back. Now Git branching, which is much more, which is a much safer way of doing, is a bit like that. So imagine you've got some code, and everything's working, you're getting your all your unit tests are passed, or you're getting a 200 back from your URL from your REST API or something like that, and you decide to change something. So you're like, maybe I'll do some refactoring here, maybe I'll change this slightly, but you're happy with that piece of code, and now you want to change. Okay, and try something new. Now branching really helps with this, because it allows you to go off and make some changes without affecting the original branch. Okay, so that's saved, your master will be saved. You branch off, do your changes, play around with the changes. If everything goes wrong, you can just go back to the master. But if you're happy, what you can do is you can merge the branch into the master. But I'll show you how to do that. Okay, right. Now what we do is we'll check the Git status. Okay, so we're up to date with the master, etc., etc. Now and we know that our file is just a bunch of numbers. So imagine we're like, the numbers all work great, let's try some letters, silly example, but we'll do sudo So no, actually, what we will do is we'll branch off. So in my file, I'm going to try out something new, which is letters, which I'm a bit unsure of, but I want to put this into a new branch. So I'm not touching my original master. I'm going to play around in a new area. So that's where I branch off. Okay. So this will be an easy way to do this is git checkout. So you check out into a new branch. If the branch doesn't have to exist, so you do a -b to check out, and we give it a name. We'll call it letters. Okay, so git checkout -b, which is for branch letters. Okay, so we're now in a new branch called letters. Okay, and you can see there. On branch letters, right, so if we now do a cd vi, for example, there we go, and there we are. Okay, so I'll go for a new ABC, fine. Right, now if we do a git state, get that right, git status, okay. We are on our branch letters and we're in the same workflow again. So it's git add and then git commit. But what you've got to remember, you're not committing into master. You're committing into your branch. This is the whole point of, like, when we're on the branch, you can just try out something new and you're not affecting your original master. Okay. So we go git add example. Yep. And git commit new letters, simple like that, fine. Okay, now if we do our reflog, so this is where it can be a bit complex, but what you can see is you see the changes here. So we had that with added the additional numbers, so that was in master, as you can see there. Then we did a checkout, so we moved from master, so the master branch, into letters. Okay, that's the change there that you can see. So there's no new commit ID, but this is the commit that we've added, the new letters. You got a commit ID there, and it's in letters. Okay, so it's in a separate branch. Now we've committed that. So if we do a cat to show you this, if you do a cat example, right, you can see the letters in there. Now, what you can do is you can move between branches. So if this was some code, you could say, okay, that's fine. Let's go back and check the original and flip between the branches. So it's nice. It's like a save point locally as well. So if we do, we go back to master. You won't be able, I should say, you won't be able to do this unless you've done the commit or a stash. So you can't make changes in a branch and just leave it, because there'll be you'll get a warning that you need to do the commit. So if you make you commit your save point in your branch, then you can move back to master if you so wish. I mean, and there you can see, look, the original file, for example, 1 is unaffected. Okay, because we've got these different, we've got the commits in the branch. Right, so let's go back, git checkout. So we'll go back to letters. Obviously you don't need to do the -b here. Actually I should show you this command. So it is git branch, and it shows you the branches that you've got. So at any point, if you've got multiple branches, you can see which branch you've got. So we can do, because we've created the branch, we can just do a git check out to, does it fill in? No. Okay, letters. There we are. So we're back on git status. We are on branch letters. Now, if I do, guess what example.txt is going to show me? Is it going to show me the letters? Yes, it does, because that's saved. So you can see there, that's a nice way of, if you've got some code that's working and you don't want to change it, you know, rather than in the past you might do something like, oh, working code example -1 save, working code example -2 save. You don't need to do that. You just have the one file and you use git to move between the branches so that you can do commits that are saved in one branch and not affecting your original. This is where you start to see the power of git. Okay, now in this case, what you should do is, I mentioned you should never commit to master, really, like when you're in a, because you can cause problems on that kind of golden file. So you don't want to touch that. What you want to do is use the power of Git, use GitHub to actually help you out here. So I've got these changes, like how do I get those into my master? What we do is we push while we're in the branch, and we push up to GitHub in the branch. That's essentially the workflow. Just stick with it if you're not really getting this. So if we do a git remote, it's fine. You've just got the origin there. Now let's do a git push. Let's see what it says. Right, now the thing with the git push is because the branch doesn't exist up on GitHub, you actually have to set that up, okay? So what we need to do is telling us the current branch letters has no upstream branch. That's because we created it with a git checkout-b locally. It's not on GitHub at the moment, and it's telling us, this is one nice thing about Git, is that it does give you these warnings. Like, I think a lot of the time people get a bit confused and they're like, oh, what does all this mean, and they kind of glaze over, but it's actually telling us what we need to do. So we'll just follow this, okay? Git push, it will all make sense once you get more into Git. So we'll paste that in there, essentially saying that we are going to create the branch up on GitHub as well. So we push that, and it's telling us, okay, so we've created a new branch, letters, up remotely on GitHub. Branch letters set up to track. Okay, fine. Right, if we go up to GitHub, so I'll do a refresh, and there, look, you see straight away you've got this new branch. So recently pushed branches. Now, what do you think example one's going to show us? Yeah, it's just the numbers, because that's the master. If we go back to demo there, we can look at our branches. We've got two branches here, and so you can see your branches. We've got letters and we've got master. Okay. And if we go, so this is kind of a shortcut for you. So the process now is that we've got the two branches, we've got the numbers and the letters down locally, and we've got the letters branch. We've pushed the branch up to GitHub. So the file up on GitHub will be, and I'll show you that if we go into the branches. There we go. So let's go into letters. If we look at the version of example one that's up on letters, it's the one with the commit of the letters. Okay, so that's now in a branch, but it's not in my master. Now what I need to do, so this is where a pull request comes in. So we request that they pull the file, the letters branch, into the master. That's what we're going to do. So yeah, it gives you these lovely green buttons, so you can use GitHub to compare. We'll hit that button, and this is us opening a pull request. Okay, so you might think it's a bit strange that if it's just in a single project that you're doing things like branching and pull requests, but once you start getting into this and you start having writing code, etc., or longer documents, using branching and pull requests is an excellent way of essentially utilizing Git properly with what it's good for. Okay. So we're opening a pull request here, and you can see that we are comparing the letters branch with the master, and it says we're able to merge. Okay, I won't go into that at the moment, but that can be a bit problematic. If you are not able to merge, then you need to work out the conflicts, but there's no conflicts in this at the moment. So this is our pull request. Here, if you were in a project and you were working as a group, you would really want to make sure that you put a lot of information about the changes that you've made in your branch that you want to pull in. So you can write comments there, and you can use Markdown, etc., to really kind of emphasize what you're doing. Give it a great name. So new letters in example.txt, that will do. It gives you a boilerplate name. So what we're going to do, and then you can see, actually, if you scroll down, you can see the changes. So in green, that's the changes that have been made. Red is when you take something out of the file, but here you've got green. So that's what we've added, and there you can see the commit. So if I had multiple commits, they'd all be listed, but remember, we only had one commit in the branch. So what I do is I hit the green button to create a pull request. Then it will go through and it will tell us if we've got any conflicts, which we do not for this. And then we can do a merge. If you select this, you get multiple. So if you've got multiple commits, you can squash them into one. If you've got lots and lots of commits, so that you don't have a history which are full of commits that maybe you don't need, so and you can squash them into one commit. But in this case, I'll just create a merge commit. There we are, which is the basic. Then you can leave a comment and things like that. Down the side here, if you're in a group, you could have reviewers that need to review the pull requests. You can assign it, add labels, do all of these good things. This is when you're in a real project. That's the real power of using GitHub for this. So let's merge. Then we've got the merge pull request, and I'm going to confirm the merge. And straight away it asks if you want to delete it. So you could. This is a bit of hygiene essentially. So you can delete the branch on GitHub. Remember, we've created it on GitHub, not locally. It would still stay locally, but you could delete the branch if you wanted to. I'm going to do that actually. I'll delete the branch there. You can always restore it. Now what we do is if we go back here, we can see we've got multiple commits into master, and if we look, remember now we've only got one branch because I deleted that off, and if we look at example now, there you are. So it's got the letters in. So what we've done is we've branched, we've done a push up to GitHub, we've done a pull request which has pulled it into master. Okay, so what's not finished now? We've got our master locally. We've got our branch letters locally. We've created the branch on GitHub, and then we've pulled it across. But I always say it's like a circle. You've got to think of the circle. So the difference is that our master locally does not have that commit. And I'll show you that. So this is the circle that you need to think about. I hope this is making sense. This is how you crack. If you can visualize this is how you crack the workflow for Git, for pull requests, etc., etc. Think of the circle. Right, so and that's finished. That's essentially up there. That's up on GitHub with the commit. If we go back to the terminal, do a git status, and you can see we're on the branch letters. Fine. So if we do a cat on example 1 in letters, you'll see ABC. Yes. Okay. Now remember, you can do your git branch, and it shows us we've got letters and master. Fine. So let's do a git checkout to master. Okay. Now we're on master, and we do git status. Okay, we're up to date. That's because we don't know about what's happened up on GitHub. Now, we don't know about those commits because they're in a different branch up to GitHub. Now, if we do a cat on this example, there you see you don't have the letters yet. So what we need to do is we need to pull down from the master. This is the circle that I'm talking about. It's like there's 4 versions of this when you have a branch. You've got your local master, your local branch, your remote branch, and your remote master. Now the remote is origin in this case, so it's your origin master is different from our local master. We need to pull that down. Okay, and how do we do that? Right, so there's multiple ways to do this. The quickest way to do it is to just do a git pull, and that will pull it down for us. There we are, done. Now that's actually going to have brought that down, and you can see there we are. So that's brought down to our local master. The origin master has come down, and it's got a +1 there. So if we do that command again, and there we are. There we go. So you see the circle is complete, and it's that last point I think that some people get a bit unstuck with. Okay, so now we're entirely up to date. Now a different way of doing that is a git fetch and then a merge. So that will be to fetch down from master. And a fetch down just pulls the changes down. It doesn't actually. So what you can think of is like a git pull is like a fetch and a merge, I think. Whereas a fetch, so it's like a compound of the two commands. So you might hear about a git fetch. So when you look at a git remote, v like that, it tells you what the fetch is. So the fetch is to bring those commits down to your local, and then you need to do the merge. So we've done a git fetch. Let's do a git merge, and everything's up to date. Okay, because I've already done that. I've already updated that. So that's it for this video. I know there's a lot in there, but hopefully that shows you a working example. Hopefully you will have found that useful. And that's it. I just wanted to do that for my buddy Arnold. Like I said, he asked me about this stuff. I hope that will be useful for other people. Now you might ask, like, how did I learn this myself? Well, essentially I just banged my head against the wall quite a lot. Now there is a free resource. Let me see. Right, it is. Okay, I got it. Git SCM, right? Here you can find some documentation on this web page. You have actually it was this book, right? Book here, so on git-scm.com/doc, there's this pro Git book. Is it still free? It used to be free. Yes. Okay, so it's this book that I essentially just tried to digest over months of starting to learn Git. I just went through these basics, banged my head against the wall enough until I finally got it, and now I'm very happy to say that I have. So thanks very much for watching. My name is Joe Neville. Like, comment, subscribe, all of those good things, and goodbye.